Thank you. So I get to talk to you today about one of my favorite subjects, this being renewable energy. I want to take you on a journey today. What I think is fun about this title page is that each one of these slides are from Edmonton. 30 years ago, I would be giving lots of presentations and using slides from New Mexico and Arizona and places like that. But now we can do it just with slides from Edmonton. So, renewable energy in Edmonton, are you kidding? Come on, look it, it's cold here. It tends to be dark every night and in the winter. So let's talk about the context of renewable energy. What's going on? The challenges to it. Do you agree that there's some challenges? It's not fait accompli, there's some things in the way, some barriers? Yeah, well, there's some possibilities too. What can really be done? There's a bunch of stuff to consider, yeah. Lots of options, lots of different ways of doing it. But the bottom line really is, how do we lay the groundwork for increasing its use, and what really needs to be done? Well, there's lots to talk about. We can talk about the technology up the yin-yang. I'm an electrical engineer. I love technology. Man, oh man, we could chat all the time about it. There's lots of things we can talk about: the characteristics of renewable energy, how to develop business, and how to organize society, which is a very interesting concept in its own right. And underneath these, there's lots of other things. We could give 1-hour presentations on any one of these things. But I only have 40 minutes. So my challenge is, what the heck am I going to talk to you about today? Because I really want to talk to you about the technology. We could talk about the environment, where we get our energy from. We could talk about emissions, the real costs of energy, what really the damage is to the environment. Are we really going to continue to pay for it? This is me in Baytown, Texas in 1976. I was shocked when I encountered this scene. Can you imagine? This is Alberta. Do we really want to do things this way? This is what happens to our plumes of flaring. Sure, there's lots of other environmental things that are of concern to us these days. Absolutely. Lots to talk about. The previous speaker gave a great presentation on peak oil. There's another presentation that could be given on peak uranium too, which is fascinating. But really, I think it's about what really is going to be our legacy to the next generation. Some people say that we're handing the next generation a big mess in the environment, in energy, in infrastructure, in finance, and in social structure. Well, it's fascinating. I don't know that the young generation really knows what we're handing them. I think if they really understood the message we are handing over to them, I wonder if they would riot. Shoot, they already are. This is Greece and their financial mess, and look at all the other messes that have been, sorry, not riots, it's peaceful demonstrations, isn't it? Well, what's going to happen here in Canada? Yep, there's a lot of people saying a lot of different things, but the bottom line is, what can we do in Edmonton? That's really the bottom line for us. I'm thrilled to see this new plant being constructed which converts municipal solid waste to diesel fuel, renewable energy in Edmonton. Fabulous. There's lots of other things going on too. Downtown, there's some solar thermal systems being installed. On people's houses too, solar thermal. There's the new Edmonton Transit System bus barn in the Terwilliger area, which has this huge solar wall on it. But my specialty is solar electricity, so I'll play around with that a little bit, just because I have way more photos of solar electricity than the others, not to be too biased. But there's a lot going on in the solar electric field these days. There's lots of different examples in Edmonton on houses, buildings, the Edmonton Solar Electric Pilot Program. Look at this, the biggest sunshade north of Calgary, solar electric system. So there's lots going on, a lot of people having fun. There's the net zero energy houses, Riverdale. How many people here have seen the Riverdale net zero house? Cool. The Mill Creek net zero house? The Belgravia net zero house? How about the Belgravia Green Net Zero House? It's under construction. There's about 12 of them happening in Edmonton now. How about the Brentwood Apartments net zero building under construction? That's fascinating. In Edmonton, typically people place systems on the roof of their buildings. That's pretty boring. We should integrate it into windows and walls and shades and roofing materials and shingles and cities, including not even facing north. Including not even facing south. And fields and car parks. Lots going on. We could talk about connecting to the grid, fascinating subject. Where does the electricity go? How much do we get for it? What are the politics involved? Can't we get a green feed-in tariff here like Ontario? Lots to talk about. What's happening to the price of electricity? What's happening to the price of gas? Solar electricity is a booming industry, 46% per year growth over the last 17 years. And that's just solar. Wind is doing similar things. Other renewables are growing too tremendously. And then America has their Sunshot program, which is expected to reduce the cost of solar electricity on a utility scale so that in Alberta we could generate solar electricity for 5 cents a kilowatt hour by 2020. Amazing work that's going on here. So in the past, solar electricity was expensive, absolutely, but that's not the future. I suggest we'll be reaching grid parity fairly soon in Alberta. 2 to 4 years from now, if I'm wrong, maybe 6. So there's something happening in the future. The thing that I'm fascinated about is how do we get there? We can watch others, we can meet, we can discuss, we can explore, we can do research, we can plan, we can find options, we can make choices. But you know, the only thing that counts is action, taking steps. If you guys sitting here today, if I can challenge you, if you don't go home and within a year do something, then it's almost as if you haven't even been here today. Gee, I hope we can take action. So in the task force, we looked at different kinds of renewable energy. Pembina Institute did a very interesting study on the renewable energy potential for the city. And they focused on solar for daylighting, heating, and electricity. How many people here live in a solar heated house? Couple? Cool. How many people have south-facing windows in their house? And what goes in those south-facing windows? Sorry? Plants. Yes, but what comes in from the outside into your south-facing windows? The sunshine. And what does the sunshine do when it gets into your house? Sorry? It heats it. So how many people really do live in a solar-heated house? We all do. How many people live in a house that's illuminated by sunshine in the daytime? We all do. The problem is that unfortunately our houses are built so poorly that we think we have to buy electricity and gas to heat our houses. Well, that's not really true. We just have to insulate them a lot better and then use on-site solar energy. How many people have a geothermal heating system in their house? How many people have a geothermal cooling system in their house? How many people have a basement in their house? And is it warmer in your basement than upstairs? I'm sorry, cooler in the summer? That's because it's actually a passive geothermal system. So just think, you can go home to your friends and boast that you live in a house that's passive solar heated with solar daylighting and you have a passive geothermal system in your house. That's true. District heating can be, it's not renewable energy in its own right, but it can certainly facilitate renewable energy. Biomass, there's a lot of biomass around. I think Slave Lake had a problem with biomass a few weeks ago, didn't they? So I wonder if, and all that biomass out there is converting huge amounts of solar energy into wood every year. And I wonder if there's a harvestable resource, as long as we manage it right, that we could use to productively heat and electrify our cities. What's fascinating, there's really little opportunity within the city of Edmonton's boundaries for wind. Little opportunity. There's a few areas which are, but generally not. There's not too much opportunity for hydroelectricity, geothermal electricity. I don't know about ocean thermal or tidal or wave in Edmonton, but you know, maybe solar energy is like tidal energy or wave energy. It causes big waves when it goes through society and disrupts things. But how about energy efficiency? Well, energy efficiency and energy conservation is the first choice that we should have. It's the cheapest, it's the best economics, it's the most important. Renewable energy is actually a much, much smaller second choice. Well, what we're finding is that energy efficiency is not nearly as exciting as renewable energy, but even though it's the most important choice. So we want to see a strong connection between energy efficiency and renewable. We need to look for ways to link them, and there's some very interesting ways we can link them, where we can use renewable energy policy to actually facilitate energy efficiency. What I'm fascinated by is, I suggest that the major reason why we need so much energy from fossil feedstocks is because we're so wasteful. If you take a standard efficiency house, you need to buy gas or electricity for it. But if you become ultra energy efficient, you don't. So that's the key, is energy efficiency. It's fascinating when we look at Alberta's electrical energy flow diagram, which is represented by here. We get, this is as of 2008, I believe. We get 86% of our energy from coal, but last year we only got 72% from coal. In 2008, we got 11% from natural gas, a bit from BC, and then hydro primarily, and a bit from wind. So that's our primary input for electricity. But what's fascinating is that the red line is all of the electricity losses because of the fuel combustion. So 40% of that energy is wasted, goes up to heat the air. That's not good for the environment, and it's not good for our pocketbooks. Then 3% is wasted just through the energy losses in the lines. That's 3% of the big brown lines on the left, not 3% of the smaller blue line in the middle. So then we have the gross electricity generation that we can actually put to use. And that's roughly 37% of the energy that we burned in the first place. That goes to oil and gas, other industrial, farms and irrigation, commercial and residential, and that's percentage based on the height of the bar on the left-hand side. My suspicion, though, is that we can reduce our energy consumption a lot more at the right-hand end as well as the left-hand end. So we can make that right-hand blue arrow much, much smaller than it actually is, just by being energy efficient. And that's what we need to be doing. And this is just the electricity side. We can say the same thing on the natural gas side too. So it's fascinating when we look at energy in the context of sustainability. We know that sustainability has three pillars to it: environment, social, and business. Well, environment is really like the womb of society, isn't it? It's what's the foundation for life and our health. And we need to have energy that is low or net zero operating emissions, and we need energy that is fast payback in its embodied energy and emissions. And this is some of the things that renewable energy can give to us. What we're seeing is that the drivers for energy when it comes to environment are changing. People are wanting energy supplies that are sustainable. They're wanting to see a reduction in the environmental impacts, and they're wanting to see greater energy use and price security. We want to see more of the top two pictures and less of the bottom two. Then the social imperatives. Well, the social capital, the relationships between us, is like the glue of society. And renewable energy can provide, in some situations, like in buildings, greater comfort, natural lighting, higher levels of productivity, depending on the source of energy and its application, of course. Little or zero noise, can provide highly reliable energy, can provide secure energy, resiliency, independence. Renewable energy is highly attractive. What's fascinating is that I've seen so many of my colleagues in the renewable energy industry find more purpose and meaning and satisfaction in life once they are in the renewable energy industry instead of in the oil industry. I find so many of my colleagues come into the renewable energy industry from the oil and gas industry, where they've just said to me, "Gordon, I was fed up blowing the environment to bits. I wanted to do something better with my life." I'm amazed that those are the things they're telling me. So there's the social side to it too. What we're also seeing is that renewable energy creates more jobs. Look at this here from the Berkeley University. Solar photovoltaics will give you 0.87 job years per gigawatt hour of electricity consumption, of electricity production. And then you go down to the bottom, nuclear, coal, and gas, 0.11 and 0.14. So if we want jobs, and I appreciate maybe in Alberta we don't care about jobs because there's lots of fossil energies around, and that's fine, but if we want jobs for the world's masses, really renewable energy is where we can source it, as well as with energy efficiency, of course. So then there's the economic imperatives. Economics, of course, are the engine of society, the foundation for business ventures. There's tens of millions of renewable energy systems being installed every year around the world. It's a proven technology. There's worldwide markets now worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It's rapidly dropping in capital costs. The economics are getting better. There's stable energy prices. They're easily scaled. Solar electricity can go from your house all the way up to utility scale using more or less exactly the same technology. There's zero or low operating costs for renewable energy, depending on the source. Zero or low maintenance costs. And usually it's political proof, but I'm not 100% sure whether it'll continue to be political proof. So it's fascinating then to put out the challenge for business. How can you evolve in the face of all of this transition going on? What are the new ways of doing business? How can you generate new and healthy competing business models when we have this, what's really a disruptive technology called renewable energy? The bottom line, I think, is how can we grow the economy, because that's what everybody's all about, and yet not affect the environment as much. In fact, reduce the effect on the environment. So we see society changing. How do we prepare for the future is the big challenge. What is now, okay, is now, but it's not the future. It takes a long time to change, so we need to be starting now. There's some very influential people in Edmonton who are now saying that our plans to respond to renewable energy, to the environment, are 10 years too late. We should have done this 10 years ago. Can you imagine? Can you imagine doing what we're doing now 10 years ago? I don't think there was the appetite. So we really need a serious start to making the necessary changes towards renewable energy by removing the barriers that hinder the market growth, by facilitating the development of industries and supply chains. And this is great. I'm amazed at what's happening as I look around with my colleagues, with Edmonton, with Alberta, Canada, and the world, and seeing how much we're all learning about what can be done, what other municipalities are doing, and what should be done to reach sustainability. So in Edmonton, although I showed you lots of pictures, most houses have passive solar on them, unintentionally. Maybe 25 or so intentionally did that. Active solar heating, 2 to 3 dozen. Domestic water heating systems, perhaps 5 solar space heating systems. Solar electricity, perhaps 70 systems now. But there's 300,000 houses in Edmonton. So we got a long way to go. We've made a start, but just a start. How many wind electric systems in Edmonton? I've seen 2, little itty bitty ones. How many landfill gas systems? Well, there's one that's been around for 15 years, which is a great example. And then there's a few waste heat systems. My guess would be 5. Well, guess what? Alberta isn't an oil province. We're a solar energy province. When you add up all the energy falling on Alberta's surface area per year, that's 3,000 exajoules, which is a huge number. Many, many zeros behind it. But if you really take off all the lakes and the cities and towns and mountains and really get something practical out of it, we could get about 26 exajoules. Well, it's fascinating to compare that with how much we pull out of the ground with coal, oil, and gas every year. We pull out about 12 exajoules every year. So there's more than twice as much practical solar energy that we can get from the sun in Alberta as compared to all our coal, oil, and gas and bitumen that we remove from the ground. And yet, 60% of that is exported. 2 exajoules is what we use here. And we get 26 from the sun. And in terms of electricity, we use a lot less electricity than we use for heating and for fuel. And so we use about 0.2 exajoules a year of energy in Alberta, compared to 26 exajoules we can get from the sun. So you see, we're a solar province. This is a solar planet. If it weren't so, I think we'd be up the creek. But it's fascinating then, and I apologize for switching units here, to see how much Edmonton uses. Pembina's report on renewable energy potential in the city said that we use 44,000 million kilowatt hours in electrical energy and natural gas, and that's not including transportation fuel. So to put that in perhaps more practical terms, that's the equivalent of 7.3 million households, which is 24 times more than we have. That's because industries and big buildings use huge amounts of energy. So if we were to take solar electric technologies, not that we have to, I'm just using an example, to generate this amount of energy, we would need about 1,000 square kilometers of land, and that's with the solar electric technology spaced out properly so it avoids shading. Well, comparing that to the surface of Edmonton, Edmonton's city area is about 648 square kilometers, so we'd be using 140% of Edmonton's surface area, and roughly 10% of the surface area of Metro Edmonton. Wikipedia said that the metro area of Edmonton is about 9,000 square kilometers. I don't know whether that's true or not, but hey, that's what the internet said, so obviously it's true. So this just goes to show how much energy we really need, and this is just for electricity and natural gas fuels. So would we ever want to supply this with solar electricity? No, not at all. At all. It would be the worst thing that we could possibly do. We need to be ultra energy efficient first. Maybe reduce our energy consumption by 50% or something. We need to have a diverse amount of renewable energy resources either. Shouldn't all be solar electricity. Wind needs to be in there, biomass electricity, geothermal electricity, solar heating. It's about diversity. Diversity is the key thing. So how much could Edmonton reasonably generate of all the energy within the city boundaries? The Pembina report says we could likely generate about 20% of our own electricity within the city boundaries and 10% of our space heating. Only 10%. It's not enough, but I tell you, if we were to take a journey along that step, it would be a huge step. One small step for society, one huge leap for a city, if we were to do that. But what would this look like? Well, I would suggest we would have solar water heating on all the car washes, most homes, all the laundries, all the pools. Everywhere that you use hot water, we would want and need to have solar heating. We would have solar air heating, like on the ETS bus barns. We'd have that on most buildings. We'd have solar electricity on most buildings and homes and community buildings. We'd have geothermal heat pumps, waste heat recovery, district heating systems, combined heat and power. We would use convert a lot of our municipal waste to fuels and heating. We'd use biomass heating. Okay, but then what? After we get our 20% or 10%, how can we take further steps along the path to 100% of our energy from renewable sources? We really need the city's municipal and business leaders to go outside our city's boundaries and work with nearby municipalities to source the rest of our renewable energy. Yeah, well, we get all our food from out in the country. I don't want just to depend on the rural areas because we need to be sustainable, but I don't see how we could generate all of our energy within the city itself. So we're going to have to go to the rural area to source the rest of our energy. So to reach this goal, we start out with reasonable steps, and then we continually refine them as technology develops, as our relationships development. We need to prove the business case using life cycle analyses initially, and then see how close or how far we are away from our goals, and then provide incentives accordingly. So there's precedence for this, actually. It's fascinating. When you look at some of the characteristics of renewable energy, a lot of large organizations decry renewable energy sources because they're not dispatchable, which means centrally controllable. But that's the same as many energy efficiency measures. They can't be controlled by central organizations either. And then we see that there's high capital costs for renewable energy, although they're decreasing rapidly. Well, that's the same thing as the bitumen deposits of 30 years ago. There were huge subsidies that went into the bitumen deposits to provide them incentives. I remember from when I was at university. Renewable energy also needs innovative financing mechanisms. Well, that's the same as the bitumen deposits of 15 years ago. Remember the tax holidays that went in there, and then finally the company said, okay, now we got all these tax holidays and who knows whatever else they got, and they said, okay, now we'll develop them. That's the same thing with renewable energy. Some renewable energy sources, of course, take up lots of land area. Sure. In fact, if you were to cover southern Alberta, if you were to cover 29 square miles of land in southern Alberta with solar electricity, properly spaced out, you generate 6% of Alberta's electricity. Well, I went to the internet a few months ago and I counted 200 quarter sections of land being taken up owned by TransAlta for their coal mine there. So there's lots of land taken up with fossil fuel resources too. So there's a path that we need to follow in order to become sustainable on our energy side. Yes, we need to be ultra energy efficient. That's the first and most important thing. And then supply the remainder of energy from renewable sources. There's some transition technologies we need, like fuel cells, heat pumps, gas electric turbines, vehicles, and start with using fossil methane probably, and then go switch to biomethane that we get from biomass. The big questions really are, how fast can we do it? What can be done? What's it going to cost? Where are we going to get the money? Where are we going to get the capacity in terms of our education and training? Do we really want to do it? Big questions. So I'm fascinated to see how the leadership is in Alberta. I'm very thankful for the provincial government's energy leadership. Would you agree? Well, look what Alberta's energy strategy says. They want clean energy production. I like that. They want to improve energy production so that all sources can continue to grow. That means solar energy too. They want to improve the competitiveness of industry. Good. They want the wise use of energy, consuming energy resources with an emphasis on efficiency and conservation. Very good. They want sustained economic prosperity for Albertans. Well, we can get, 8 times more jobs out of renewable energy than we can out of fossil fuels. Good. And then there's the report called Shaping Alberta's Future. It'll be fascinating to go and unpack that too, because it's got some very, very significant elements in it that I think support renewable energy too, depending on the eyes that you have. And then there's the municipal leadership. My goodness, look what communities are doing in Alberta. Okotoks. Has anybody heard of the Okotoks Drake Landing project? Yeah, solar heating on 52 homes. Wow. HatSmart. Medicine Hats incentive called hatsmart.ca. Drayton Valley, Sherwood Park, Stony Plain, Hinton, Lethbridge Olds, High River, and I bet I've left off at least a dozen more towns in Alberta that are doing things. Dawson Creek, Toronto, amazing things Toronto's doing. Vancouver, look at topgreenvancouver.ca. Their goal is to have the greenest city in the world by 2020. Do you believe they'll achieve that goal? Can I have a show of hands whether Vancouver will achieve that goal or not? Yes? Some people say yes. I don't think they will at all. At all. You know why? Edmonton's going to get there first. Yes. Who's up for that? Absolutely. Mark, you have to say yes. And then there's Gainesville, Florida. Little city tucked away in the middle of Florida, which has its own municipal feed-in tariff. Barcelona, Spain. London. Wow. I went on to this website called Desire, the database of state incentives for renewables and energy efficiency. I made 50 PDF pages of summaries, just basic summaries of what American cities are doing. I made 1,400 pages of what American states are doing. Wow, there's a lot going on. And then we have Edmonton. The Way We Green. It's really important for you to go on to thewaywegreen.ca and look at all of the things that we're doing. Fabulous. That we're proposing to be doing. Sustainability is the key, and resiliency. Really important for the future, so we can afford it. So what's fascinating when I look at what other cities are doing and what other parts of Edmonton are doing, there's some key market transformation tools out there in order to facilitate renewable energy. One is to level the economic playing field, to put financial incentives in place, just like the bitumen deposits in northern Alberta, to put the financial incentives in place to level the playing field. That's what they're doing in Ontario. That's what we're doing in Italy, South Australia, Austria, Spain, Germany. And then to put in financing tools, access to ultra low-cost financing, to open the doors so that lots of people can do it. But then you have to fund the incentives. Okay, where's the money going to come from? It's one thing to say we'll give you 80 cents a kilowatt hour for your electricity, but where's that money going to come from? Big question. And then I like the role of policies, codes, and standards. A policy is an answer to a commonly asked question. A code and a standard is a way to say, this is the way society is going to move, you have to do it this way. Like seatbelts in cars, like speed limits on roads. Those are codes and standards. What's really key in our move, in our transition to renewable energy, is what I call training. It starts off with awareness, which is really a presentation like this today. This is an awareness function. Then there's education, which really answers the question, how can we really do it? Then there's capacity development, which is what Nate is doing, and the U of A and Grant MacEwan, and then to demonstrate it so people can really see what's going on. That's why I like the Eco Solar Home Tour every year, which is the first Saturday of June, because it really demonstrates to everybody what common everyday people are actually doing with renewable energy in their houses. So leadership is really important, and the city can provide lots of great leadership by implementing it on its own property. And then there's the advocacy. How can we influence others, like the provincial government, like the Canadian government, to put in place their own incentives and financing tools for renewable energy? A really key role for the city. So it's fascinating then when you look at the steps to the future. You start out on the lower left-hand corner and you do a bunch of demonstration. You introduce it to society. Then the society starts to commercialize it and introduce products into society. Then you see barriers. My goodness, that's what happened when I put a solar electric system in my house in 1995. Found lots of barriers. And then incentives come along the way. And then there's long-term price signals and businesses make business models. And the market grows. The cost of implementing it comes down. And look at the top. Information and awareness, all throughout the whole process. This is how all technologies happen. Look at cars and planes and computers, cell phones. This is how renewable energy is happening. What I love is that money talks. We really need to let it talk really loudly. So that's why incentives, I think, have a really important role. But the question really is how far and how fast? Sure, we can stimulate short-term interest and activity level. We can find quick wins. That's good. We need to do that. And then we need to proceed in a healthy way, in a practical way in order to achieve the goals. And so then we'll see progress at a pace that's intentional and not accidental and not unmanaged towards meeting our goals. So I encourage you to engage with the Renewable Energy Task Force. There's a draft discussion paper available for you to download. If you go to the city's website, edmonton.ca/renewable energy, you can download it. We'd love to get your comments. There's a little survey there. But the essential question, I think, in life is how do we want to organize ourselves? I love this quote. So socialism collapsed because it did not allow the market to tell the economic truth. Well, guess what? Capitalism is heading towards collapse. Because capitalism does not allow the market to tell the truth about the ecology. So do we really want to go in this direction? Just because the market forces are not allowed to tell the truth? I think that's fraud. So I think there's some basic questions of how we want to organize ourselves in society in order to meet the economic goals, sure, the environmental goals and the social goals. And I think renewable energy coupled with energy efficiency are the keys to doing this. Because really, after all, we hold the prosperity and the economy and resiliency of Edmonton in our hands. I think it's really important, not just for us now, but for the people to come along in the future.